Welcome to the very first episode of the Windsor Gallery Art Chart. My name is Theo Lanso, and I'm here with my co-host, Wofai Ibiang.
Thank you so much, Theo. And we're also joined here today by the curator and the director of arts at the African School of Economics, Miss Aisha Aliu Bima. Aisha, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Wofai. Hi, Theo.
Hello,
I'm
Aisha.
really happy
Hello.
to be here. How are you guys doing?
We're really good.
We're really good.
So yeah, thank you so much for being our very first guest. And yeah, so let's just get right into it. So yeah, you have a full-time job as a curator. You have a full-time job as a director of art. So I suppose how does all that work?
It's very interesting because I really enjoy what I do.
Hmm.
So sometimes I don't know when to stop because all roles sort of blur into each other. My role as director of arts is quite different than a standard curatorial role. And my duties as a curator are also a bit different, but at the end of the day, growing one supports the other. And yeah, so I sort of need them both. I enjoy the structure of my work as director of arts, but then I also really enjoy my work as a curator. So yeah, I just never know when to stop. I think that's the biggest problem for me. So I just keep working all the time because sometimes I'm in the middle of my curatorial duties and I come across something and I'm like, oh, this is going to be excellent in the organization that I work with. And as a curator, especially, I'm a very sort of intellectual, like research based curator. So my methodology is heavy on the research, heavy on the history, and my organization is an academic institution. So yeah, it really blurs into each other, but I enjoy it. I think it's working out just fine. The only thing is I need to find time to take a break. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Taking breaks are very important.
they are.
Yeah.
So you have a science background. So I guess that kind of informs your very research approach.
Yeah, because like everything in science, you have to have a hypothesis, and then you try to prove that hypothesis. You go through several processes to see if it stands through. And I think that's the biggest carry on from science into art for me, that I have a lot of questions and I want to answer them. But you know, the thing with art is that it usually ends up unveiling more questions. So I
Yeah.
start with a question and I end up with eight, and I want to go deeper into that exploration. But as I said, the process is really something very enjoyable, and I'm so honored to do what I do. Of course, I feel like I have the responsibility to tell a lot of stories, to bring a lot of things to the forefront, and yeah, so that's pretty much it. But I think my scientific background really helps me, and it gives me a lot of stamina as well. Because science is like a whole different ball game. Like you go at it, you go at it, you go at it. You have to be really stubborn to be scientific. And I mean, I think arts too, at the end of the day, they become the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the rigor of science has really, really helped me in my artistic career. And I think we're in a generation where the lines blur very easily. Like we do not have to distinguish ourselves. I wouldn't even just say this generation, because sometimes I read about like older people and I see how like Da Vinci, for example, he was an artist, but he was a scientist
Yeah.
as well. And so that was the norm. I feel like really in recent times we've even moved to a sort of situation where we're rigid. We want someone to constantly define themselves as this one thing, but boxes have never really been a thing for me. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I enjoy transferring my skills from one place to the other, and yeah, I'm excited about how it's playing out.
That's very interesting. So, what would you say? At what point did you say, yes, I'm leaving the medical field and I'm focusing on curating, art?
Honestly, I think it was a very spiritual thing. I really like to use the word providence, and like in a way it felt like the hand of God. When it's time for you to do something, there's this feeling that you cannot overcome, and it's time to do it. As I said, I've always been artsy. I've always been art inclined. I would do academic readings of art for fun. That was my leisure. Like I wanted to know, and I was constantly curious about it. So, but I never thought actually at a point I think I was like, yeah, nah, I'm never gonna do this full time. Probably gonna make my money in science and then buy art or whatever. But I think at a point everything just became like you have to do this because the stories I wanted to be told, I wasn't seeing them. The artists that I knew that were working, I wasn't seeing, and I felt like I have to do something because no one is doing it. And I think for a long time I held off.
And this thing that you're doing, you're like, your specialty is the contemporary, like Arewa art scene.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're doing now. You're working with a lot of artists within that space. You're doing exhibitions within that space. And I actually have to commend you because it is something that I feel like is lacking. You know, you have a lot of artists coming from the southeast, the southwest, you know, there are lots of prominent artists there. But, you know, when you talk about like the core north, you know, we don't really kind of see a lot of that kind of stuff. But it doesn't mean that they're not working. You know, you have amazing people working, you know. Idris is doing amazing things with calligraphy. You know, and you know, I have to commend you because finally, you know, we're seeing
We're seeing more of that kind of art.
I mean, I think a really pivotal moment for me was in 2019. I was actually really anxious about an exam or something, and I wrote this essay about Northern Nigerian music. And I submitted it to the Republic Journal. To be honest, I still don't think it was like my best essay, but I think it's like my most read essay. And I sent it to the Republic Journal, and the feedback I got was incredible. And people were like, oh, they didn't know this. And to me, this essay was almost Captain Obvious. But there's really nothing, or I saw that there was nothing sort of chronicling these things in the like Northern Nigerian society. I think there's a tendency when you're northern to be very self-effacing, to be very shy, to be very reserved, to let people come to you rather than to go to people. But we're in an attention economy. And I think, especially with curating, I was having a thought one day and I'm like, listen, if someone's gonna write a book on contemporary Nigerian art, they can entirely write the book without Northern Nigeria being present.
But that happens.
Exactly. And I constantly see it. I constantly see artistic evolutions in Northern Nigeria. I grew up in Jos, which is very important to me. And I've seen how Jos influenced art in Nigeria, how it influenced film, how it influenced music, how it influenced style. And so, like, you know, and then the crisis happened and there was no documentation of this almost. And yeah, that was something that constantly bothered me growing up because sometimes I want to reminisce on my city and I go to the internet and there's nothing. So I felt like, oh, I have to do something. I have to tell these stories.
And that's what made you pick up your camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aisha is a photographer. Absolutely.
An excellent photographer.
We've been going on, but something that's very key to like who you are and your practice, we've just left out. Yeah, she's a photographer first, curator second, academic third. Don't correct me. That's how I see it.
You're missing the writer part. That's my first love.
That's her first.
Okay. So
a writer as well.
Yeah. But like, photography, it's actually the same Jos drove me into photography. First, it was on a personal level. I was in my grandmother's house. I remember walking up the stairs and there was this light. And I'm like, wow, I have to capture it. And I remember taking the picture on my BlackBerry phone. And I was so impressed with it. And I'm like, oh, wow, you can document things. And then a lot of subsequent things happened. Some of them that have historical value. And I realized I need to document them. And that's really where my photography journey started. And so with photography, I just seek to document moments that would pass. And a lot of them are reflective of my culture, of the society that I come from, of the people I know. And a lot of times, even the artists I work with end up being people I know, like Kaltime Ghana, for example, this extraordinary artist. She's absolutely brilliant, has some of the most amazing mosaics I've ever seen. They are in a number of government establishments in the country, and no one even knows of her. I mean, she designed an entire monument that represented the biggest city in northern Nigeria. And until it got demolished, she never got credit for it. So I feel like, you know, I have to
Give the voice to the
Yes, the
voiceless.
voice.
Exactly. I think it's, yeah, it feels almost spiritual. And it's not just me. I think there are a bunch of like extraordinary artists and curators working from Northern Nigeria.
Yeah.
And I just feel like when I have the opportunity to, I also need to share their work because I think in a way, Northern Nigeria tends to be othered.
Yeah.
Mm.
But it's something that I think about a lot because when we imagine Northern Nigeria, it's especially the culture, it's borderless. You
Yeah.
know, there's a culture that's shared with like three or four other countries, you know, that kind of surround us. It's Chad, it's Niger, you know, they're very similar cultures, you know, there's lots of cross-cultural similarities and communication. And I think that's actually a good thing for the Northern art,
Yeah.
is that it's easier to transcend those boundaries.
Yeah, and it does transcend a lot of boundaries. I say this often. As much as we say Afro beats to the world, there's constantly this Northern Nigerian thing to the world as well. I mean, I don't know, I can't classify the music as Afro beats because there's so many several genres.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens in Northern Nigeria. There's so many people experimenting, there's so many people doing amazing stuff. I mean, some of the most brilliant artists I know now in Nigeria are like from Northern Nigeria, and it's this extremely diverse, extremely experimental region. And
And
yeah,
there's a lot of room for that.
there is a lot of room for that. And I said with the music, for example, there was a song that went viral, I think, on TikTok earlier in the year. And like you go to Saudi Arabia TikTok, you go to Sudanese TikTok, and the song is blowing up. And it's a Hausa song. So it's like, why don't people know about this? Why do people constantly want to project their own ideas onto this society that honestly defies any ideation that you think of? So yeah, I think that's something that I want to highlight, and in a way also causes society to question by itself, because I think there's a myriad of identities, a myriad of representations of Northern Nigeria, and yeah, we just don't get to see enough of it.
Wow. We think it's so fascinating that you're spreading so much, you know, you're using your career to engage in such an important, very important topic. And which leads me to my question. What would you say is your most memorable or significant event, art related event or exhibition that you've ever held?
Honestly, I think it was showing Idris and Salim at the French Institute. In a way, it's quite simple, but Idris, for example, is an artist that I followed for years and then became friends with. And he's doing something, honestly, I've never seen in calligraphy. He's using calligraphy like no other artist I've seen. And he's from Northern Nigeria, and he's very experimental, and his work is just great. And I think at the point where I had the opportunity to, I was like, who better to show than Idris? Who better to show than Salim? And the Northern identity is really also Nigerian identity. Nigerian identity isn't just
Absolutely.
one thing, it's a variety. And I think when we expose that, we become closer. Because me and you, like, we know each other, we recognize each other.
Yeah.
And it's nothing about, oh, I'm Northern and
Yeah.
you're not Northern or whatever. It's that we're all human and we all have these stories to tell. And I think that we all deserve a platform to tell those stories.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Aisha.
Thank you.
Like, you know, I love you. And you,
We love you.
yeah, you
So
continue
much.
to inspire me.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now, before we just wrap up, you know, I just want to know, who are the people we should be keeping our eyes on?
Exactly.
You know, so just like let us know who to focus on, we should chase up.
Are you ready for a long list?
Let's keep it
Let's
short
keep it short.
and sweet.
Okay, I think I'm just gonna say the names as fast as I can. I mean, they are the classic Professor Jerry Buhari, Kaltumi Ghana. They've been working for years. They're exceptional. But in the younger generation, you have Alhamdu Andrila, you have Judith Dadut, you have Saude Imam, you have Ahmed Abdullahi Al-Majri, there's Mangai Joel Lawang, there is Mariam Taraki doing
I
incredible things in
love her.
photography.
I love her.
Exactly, there's Rahima Gambo.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a myriad. And also the curators doing amazing stuff. There's Sada Malumfashi doing the annual Hausa International Book and Arts Festival. There is I forget her name, but there's calf art, and you should look up everything about calf art. And there's Sabo Pade, who is doing incredible things across the world.
And an honorable mention to Imran as
Oh yeah,
well.
Imran Tilde.
Imran Tilde.
My apologies. I love his Jeremiah.
Yes, and you know the whole well, how would I say, the Arawa futurism that he's doing. I like it. You know, like it's experimental.
Yeah.
It's
And
fresh.
Kaduna
Yeah.
as well. I think Kaduna is really holding the fort down for young Ariwa
Yeah.
artists.
Yes, and
There's
we're here
just
for it.
A lot of them. There's Salim Abdul Razak. He's
Yeah.
doing incredible experimental stuff. There's Mariam Megida, who is just, going across.
Great as well.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
I have to say there's Barry Yusuf as well. I mean, this is like, they're just a bunch of incredible people who might not really agree to a fixed identity per se, but like the work they're doing is just so important and global, universally relatable. So yeah. But yeah, I think I'll just post a list. So if you want there's a bunch of
No, you've definitely given us a lot of homework to do.
yes. Shout out TJ Benson as well.
TJ, yeah, phenomenal writer. Yeah, and also shout out to Fasaha Cafe, which has really become one of those spaces, that really promotes and appreciates
Yes.
a lot of these artists.
Yeah,
artists,
and I think lastly, I think that no matter what we try to do as individuals, there's really nothing that can move the needle like government being supportive of something. And I think that's one incredible thing that the previous government in Kaduna State did. They were really excellent patrons of the art, and they enable the arts to thrive through like Kaba Fest, which is the Kaduna Arts and Books Festival, and a lot of other programming. And you can see there's this incredible generation of artists just working and thriving from Kaduna. And I just think that's really incredible. Yeah.
All eyes on Kaduna.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you
Aisha.
so much. It's always a pleasure having any sort of conversation with you.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, and I've enjoyed speaking with you guys.
Okay. All right.
you.
So there you have it from the curator, photographer, academic writer extraordinaire, Aisha Aliyu Bima at the Windsor Gallery Art Chart. Thank you.